I used to think the lights went out because of the sky. But now I know it was the people who made this village dark." Darin had always seen himself as ordinary. And in a way, he was. He rose before the sun like most men in the village, wore pressed shirts that his wife ironed with silent care, and led morning meetings at the commune office beneath the fraying portrait of the king. He wasn't a man of ambition. Not exactly, but he had order, respect. His family, his quiet wife and bright-eyed son, were seen as a model by others. Neighbors often said, "That house, it has harmony." The house was a wooden stilt home, perched above fields that turned golden every harvest season. It creaked when wind blew, and smelled of lemongrass and old paper. His wife, Marley, took care of everything inside. She rarely raised her voice. And when she smiled, it was the kind of smile that spoke more of patience than joy. But in a place like their village, that was enough. Life moved slowly there. Chickens announced the morning, the temple bell echoed every 6 hours, and gossip fluttered between kitchens like smoke from burning rice husks. Darin liked that rhythm. It made things feel predictable, safe, until she moved in. Her name was Lin. She was the granddaughter of old Mei Su, who lived in the house next door. Lin had come from the city, they said, to care for her grandmother. Young, unmarried, always humming. She wore silk wraps in her hair and let her sleeves fall just a little lower on her shoulders than the other women. She didn't smile at everyone, just enough to be remembered. The first time Lin came over, it was evening. The power had gone out again, a common nuisance. Darin had lit the kerosene lamp while Marley stirred soup over the fire. There was a knock. Lin stood there barefoot, holding her phone like a lost child. "Uncle Darin," she said, voice soft, eyes wide. "Can I charge my phone for a while? Grandma's candles are out, and I'm a little afraid of the dark." He hesitated, then nodded. She came inside, barefoot, thanking him in a voice that seemed too practiced to be spontaneous. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, as though she were counting exits. Marley didn't speak. She gave a polite nod, wiped her hands, and returned to her cooking. Lin stayed no more than 15 minutes. But in that time, Darin noticed details that, at the time, didn't feel like anything. How her nightdress clung to her frame from the heat. How she laughed softly when she almost tripped over the mat. How she kept thanking him, unnecessarily, as if gratitude was her second language. When she left, Marley looked at him, not accusingly, just quietly. "She doesn't seem afraid of much," she said. He laughed. "You're overthinking. She's just polite." Marley didn't answer. That would have been the end of it. If Lin hadn't returned. She came again 3 days later. Then again. Always in the evening. Always when Marley had stepped out to help her mother. Sometimes with a half-dead phone. Sometimes with a small excuse. "Grandma fell asleep early." Or, "The geckos are louder than usual." Each time, Darin opened the door, and each time, he told himself it was nothing. It was a village. After all, people helped each other. But slowly, something shifted. He found himself checking the window when the lights flickered. Not to see if the generator held, but to see if she would come. He caught his reflection once, waiting. Hand near the plug, heart not in its right place. Marley said little, but her silences stretched longer. Her eyes lingered not on his, but on his shirts, his pockets. Once, she found a faint shimmer on his sleeve. He told her it must have been candle wax. She didn't argue, just turned away and folded laundry harder than she needed to. At dinner, she said, "She's young. So, you tell me." He frowned. "Are we really going to do this? She's our neighbor. Neighbors don't wear perfume to borrow sockets." He laughed again, a little too loud. "Marley, come on, you're not one of those jealous wives. Are you?" She didn't reply. And that, more than anything, left a crack in the silence. But Darin didn't stop, not because he had done something unforgivable. Not yet. But because he liked the attention. The way Lin said his name. The way she acted like he was someone important. In a village that had already decided who everyone was. It felt good to be seen as something new. And perhaps, that was when the darkness truly began. Not in the wires or the switches. but in the space between what was innocent and what was almost. The letter wasn't a dream. It wasn't imagined in a fit of jealousy. It was there, in the shirt pocket of a man who had promised her the moon while holding a lantern for someone else in the dark. Marley found it while doing laundry, as she always did on Sundays. The power had gone out again, so she scrubbed clothes by hand in the shallow aluminum basin behind the house. She wasn't looking for anything, but as she unrolled the damp shirt, his favorite one, the white with the thin blue stripe she had mended 3 times, something slipped from the pocket and landed in the water. A folded scrap of paper, pale pink, stained at the corner with something darker. Marley blinked. She picked it up. The ink had bled slightly, but not enough to hide the curves of the handwriting. Not her handwriting. "I'll wait for you when the lights go out. Under the roof where no one can see. Don't forget to smile like you did last time. It made me feel like I belonged there. L." There was a faint, waxy imprint next to the signature. Lipstick, not hers. She didn't cry. Her hand trembled, but not enough to spill the basin. She dried the letter. She folded his shirt. She finished all the laundry before going inside. That evening, she walked to her mother's house. The path was familiar, dusty, lined with banana trees. Her mother opened the door with a face already lined with worry. Marley sat without speaking for a long time, then simply said, "I think he's doing something with that girl. The one who always comes when the power goes out." Her mother sighed. "You have no proof," she said softly. Marley pulled out the note. Her mother read it, then read it again, but instead of anger, her expression changed to something else. A kind of sad exhaustion. "Don't confront him yet," she said. "The village doesn't take kindly to women who raise their voice first." Marley nodded. She already knew that. When she returned home, Darin was sitting outside, scrolling his phone with a smile that looked borrowed. She watched him from behind the curtain for a moment. His thumb paused over something, then scrolled again. She didn't say anything about the letter. But the next day, the news began to move without her. Someone had seen Lynn walking barefoot from the back of Darin's house early in the morning. Another said they spotted Darin handing her a small plastic bag outside the market. One woman swore she heard them laughing behind the rice barn last week. But none of them came to Marley directly. Instead, they whispered. And what they whispered was about her. Maybe she got too cold. Too proper. She's not as lively as that Lynn girl. Can't keep a man with silence. The village, with all its warmth and mango trees, suddenly felt like it had barbed edges. Marley said nothing. She made his meals, washed his clothes, watered her plants. But every evening, when Darin walked through the door and greeted her like nothing had changed, she would stare just a little longer. One night, while he rinsed his feet outside, she asked without looking up, "Do you still talk to Lynn?" Darin snorted. "Where's this coming from?" "Just curious." "You're being ridiculous." He sounded annoyed. "You're letting gossip get to you. You're better than that." She didn't argue. She just pressed the lid on the rice pot harder than usual. The letter stayed folded inside her sewing kit. She touched it once a day, like checking to see if it was still real. But she did nothing with it. Not yet. At the market, Lynn was as radiant as ever. She laughed easily, touched arms lightly, told old men they looked young. Even Marley's mother had to admit, she knows how to make people like her. Darin, meanwhile, began coming home later, said it was meetings, village planning, water infrastructure. Marley said okay, and with each passing day, the gap widened. But it wasn't just between her and Darin. It was between her and everyone. Because in that village, when a husband strayed, people didn't ask what he did. They asked what the wife lacked. And Marley, with her silence, became the perfect vessel for every whispered theory. So she waited, not out of weakness, but because sometimes, silence is the sharpest sound of all. Darin had always believed that the darkness outside their wooden home was the same as the darkness in every village house when the electricity faltered. But what he didn't realize was that the darkest corners had never been outside. They had always been inside the glances, the silences, the late-night excuses, and the sudden flickers in behavior. Marley began to watch with eyes that were no longer clouded by trust. She didn't accuse, not yet. She observed, quietly, diligently. She knew how the house sounded when Darin walked. She knew how long it took for the oil lamp to warm the kitchen. And she knew that Lin's laughter carried differently than any other woman in the village, light. A little too smooth, like river stones polished too often. The first real shift came on a night with no rain, no storm, but still, the electricity went out. Darin stood and sighed. "I'll go check if the neighbors have light." Marley didn't stop him. She nodded and returned to her sewing, the thread shaking slightly between her fingers. As soon as he stepped outside, she extinguished the lamp and crept to the window. From there, barely breathing, she saw his shadow blend into another. Lin's silhouette moved from behind a tree, and the two figures disappeared behind Lin's house. She didn't follow, not with her feet, but with her mind. She followed every step they took, every breath shared in that humid, deceptive air. Later, she asked Darin if the neighbors had electricity. He scratched his head. No one did, but Lin said her charger still had a bit of battery. "So I stayed a moment to check something." She smiled faintly. "You seem to check her house a lot." He looked at her, unsure if it was a joke or something heavier. "Just being helpful. That's what you said last time." Her voice didn't rise. It floated like mist, the kind that clings to your chest without choking you but never lets go. A week later, the old widow from the north end of the village came to buy vegetables from Marley. As she gathered eggplants into her basket, she muttered, "That Lin girl reminds me of my cousin's daughter. Beautiful, kind," until she ran off with a married man and left the wife to raise 4 children alone. Marley didn't respond, but the woman pressed on, her gaze sharp beneath the folds of time. "I see her often, by your house, sometimes at odd hours. Your husband has a kind face. Too kind." Marley folded the old woman's change into her palm without a word. Her hands trembled, but her face stayed still. She stopped sleeping deeply, not out of fear, but because she didn't want to miss the sound of lies moving beneath their floorboards. Another night, Darin returned late, claiming the meeting with the council had run long. His clothes were damp. He said it rained, but the skies had been dry all evening. Marley reached for his shirt the next morning to wash it. There was a faint fragrance on it, not perfume, but shampoo, a floral scent she didn't use. A scent she had once smelled when Lin stood too close at the well. She didn't mention it, she just washed it with extra care. And while it dried on the bamboo line, she watched it sway like a flag in surrender. Her resolve didn't crack, it calcified. One day, she followed Darin. He said he was heading to the small pagoda to fix a broken plank. But instead, he took the back path toward Lin's house. Marley kept her distance, slipping between trees, heart racing not from betrayal, but from the clarity of it. She stopped when she saw him knock once, twice. Pause. The door opened. He slipped inside. She waited nearly an hour before returning home. She didn't cry, not yet. Instead, she went into their bedroom, opened the old drawer where she kept family letters and children's drawings, and began writing in a small notebook. Every time he lied, every time Lin appeared, every excuse, every sigh. She wasn't documenting pain, she was documenting evidence. The next time Lin passed by their home and smiled, Marley greeted her with the warmth of a woman who knew everything but chose, for now, to let the story unfold on its own. And then, the twist she didn't expect came not from her husband, but from Lin herself. One afternoon, Marley received a note left under the cooking pot on the porch. The handwriting was rushed. "I didn't mean to. He kept saying you didn't love him anymore. I believed him. I thought he needed me." No name signed, no apology offered, just that single sentence that broke the illusion that Lin had been naive. Now, it was clear, this wasn't temptation. This was strategy. Marley held the note over the cooking fire that evening, watching the paper curl, blacken, disappear into the same smoke where her husband's promises had long burned away. And when she laid beside him that night, she whispered so softly he barely caught it, I hope the dark keeps you safe. Because when light comes, we'll both see who you really are." He didn't respond. He turned away. And that silence was the loudest confession of all. The sound of roosters had not yet risen when she began pacing. The chill of morning mist clung to her skin. But she barely noticed it. Darin's wife, whose name the village rarely used. Because in rural Thai life, a woman was always someone's daughter, wife, or mother, stood outside their wooden stilt house holding two items, a damp shirt and a handkerchief. The shirt was her husband's. The handkerchief bore the delicately embroidered initials of the young neighbor girl. She had waited long enough. Too many nights of half-truths, dim lights, and hollow explanations had hollowed her out. Now she was just a shell filled with a steady, cold determination. As the sun began to rise over the northern Thai hills, she walked, not stormed, to the neighbor's house. It was not rage that moved her. It was something deeper, something still, something terrifying. She did not knock, she called. The shout rang across the village, a calm, firm declaration that summoned the curious and the skeptical. One by one, doors opened, sleepy faces peeked out, and sandals slapped dirt paths as villagers approached the wooden house that had, until now, hidden secrets behind lace curtains and flower pots. When enough eyes were present, she turned. Without a word, she pulled down the thin floral cloth that fluttered on the bamboo clothesline. From beneath it, she lifted her husband's shirt, creased, unmistakably his, and the handkerchief. She held them like relics of a betrayal too cruel for noise. Gasps, a few chuckles, quickly suppressed. An old woman muttered something about karma. A younger man nudged his wife. Darin arrived last. His feet dragged, his eyes avoided. His face was not the face of a man ready to lie. It was the face of a man who had been caught and had already rehearsed the speech he hoped would make him human again. He knelt, not to beg, not to repent, he just knelt. Rain from the previous night still pooled on the hard-packed earth, soaking into his pants. He didn't flinch. Lang ne I kung lam nu vei, he said in Thai, Am kong gi em she foi ra. Everyone in the village does this. I didn't think you'd expose it. It was the wrong thing to say. The villages shifted. Murmurs grew louder. The moment became about more than just a man and a woman. It was about what people tolerated, what they whispered about but never confronted. Some women began to nod. Their arms crossed tightly. One even stepped forward to hold the wife's arm. Others, mostly older men, frowned. It's not that serious, one muttered. The girl is young. Youth is foolish. Let it go. But the woman did not move. She pointed to the bamboo roof's edge, the place where the handkerchief had been found. That spot is where I hang my son's clothes, where I dry our family's laundry. It's not a place for lies to dry. Her voice didn't tremble, it didn't break, it echoed. Silence. Then, quietly, the young neighbor girl stepped out. Her head was lowered, and she held her grandmother's hand. I didn't mean to, she began, but stopped. No words could untangle what had already been spun. The crowd began to dissipate. Life in the village waited for no scandal. Fields needed tending, animals fed, but something had changed. Later that day, Darin would be summoned by the village council. Not formally punished, no such law existed, but shamed. He would not be invited to lead festivals. He would not sit at the elders' table. The respect once given freely now hovered out of reach. At home, his wife sat alone. She had not wept. In the quiet, she placed the shirt and handkerchief into a clay jar and sealed it with cloth. Not to forget, but to remember, not as a victim, but as a witness. Darin never asked for the items back. That night, he slept outside, beneath the house, where chickens sometimes took shelter. And in the distance, a light flickered in the neighbor's house. But no one knocked, not anymore. The village had seen. The village remembered. The road from the village to the bus station was not long. But that day, it felt like a lifetime. She wore the same sandals she always had, rubber soles worn thin by years of sweeping floors and chasing chickens, but she walked as if the dirt path had turned to marble. Her son, barely 7, clutched a small cloth bag and leaned his head against her side. He didn't ask questions. He had stopped asking the night the yelling ended. The night his mother folded their lives into silence and resolve. Darin's wife was no longer Darin's anything. She had left the house unlocked. No note, no drama, just the absence of her voice at breakfast. The space she once filled, suddenly echoing. The village did not try to stop her. People watched from their verandas. Some nodded respectfully, others whispered behind hands, but no one dared meet her eyes. Not after what they had seen. Not after how she had stood with her spine straight and her pain folded neatly inside the cloth she held up for everyone to see. Darin had tried, once. That morning, he had run out to the edge of the path, barefoot, shirt unbuttoned, shouting her name like a boy who had lost his kite. But she did not turn back. She didn't even slow down. By mid-morning, the bus arrived, old, painted in faded blue, its engine growling like a tired ox. She climbed aboard without a word. Her son followed. The door shut. From the window, she looked out over the rice fields, golden in the dry season sun. Somewhere, a radio played an old folk song, the kind her mother used to hum. Back in the village, consequences rolled like slow thunder. Darin faced the council again. This time, the words were final. He has failed to uphold the dignity of leadership. One elder said. He brought shame to a household known for silence. Not scandal, said another. It was not a legal sentence. But it was a cultural one. Darin lost his place on the council. No more morning meetings. No more festivals led. No more whispers of respect as he passed. He was now just Darin, the man whose wife left, the man who let lust steal his good name. As for the neighbor girl, she vanished as quickly as she'd come. Her grandmother, red-faced and trembling, packed their things the day after the confrontation. By dusk, their home was empty, only the bamboo chimes remained, clicking in the wind like a question with no answer. Some villagers said the girl had gone to live with an uncle in Chiang Mai. Others claimed she was sent to a monastery to cleanse her spirit. No one knew, no one asked. Darin spent his days tending to small things. Fixing broken tools, feeding the chickens, mending fences that didn't need mending. His nights were colder, he slept alone, and when he passed by the clothesline where it all began, he never looked up. Months passed. In another province, in a modest apartment near a busy street, a woman sat by a window with a pot of jasmine blooming beside her. She read books now, spoke to women in the market, took sewing jobs to pay for her son's school. She missed her home sometimes, the rhythm of the village drums, the scent of sticky rice in the morning, but she did not miss the weight of waiting. One afternoon, she was invited to speak on a local radio program about women, dignity, and the quiet strength required to survive betrayal. Her voice, calm and clear, echoed through the airwaves. I didn't win anything, she said, but I stopped losing myself. That was enough. Back in her small apartment, her son played with paper figures. The room was bright. A breeze carried in the smell of grilled bananas from the street vendor below. Out on the balcony, the jasmine petals fluttered. She watched them, not smiling, but not sad either, just breathing, just being. And the village, far away, caught between hills and old customs, continued on. The flowers bloomed, the gossip faded, the past remained, like footprints in drying mud, visible, but not eternal. She had walked out with old sandals. But she walked forward with something new, a truth no one could wash away.